Friends, today I am going to tell you a story that shook even the bravest souls. The story begins in 1968, where we see two girls who are absolutely terrified. They are telling the famous demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren, about a doll in their home named Annabelle. At first, they thought it was just a coincidence, but then things crossed the limit. The doll would move from one room to another on its own, and they started finding marks on the walls saying, "Miss me?" Ed and Lorraine explained to them that in reality, there is no spirit inside the doll. Instead, a demonic entity is using the doll as a conduit to eventually possess a human body. This scene alone gives you an idea that we aren't talking about an ordinary ghost, but an ancient and dangerous evil. Now the story moves forward, and we meet the Perron family. Roger and Carolyn are moving into a new home with their 5 daughters, which is an old farmhouse in Rhode Island. The house is massive, cheap, and looks quite aged. Initially, everyone is very happy, with the girls running throughout the house picking their rooms. But friends, something happens here that will put you on alert. Their dog, Sadie, flatly refuses to step inside the house. He stands at the door barking incessantly, as if he senses something inside that humans cannot see. Carolyn tries to pull him in, but Sadie backs away. The next morning, when Carolyn wakes up, she finds a new and deep bruise on her body. She thinks she might have gotten hurt during the move, but this was just the beginning of the terror that was about to strip away their every piece. At exactly 3:07 a.m., remember this time, all the old clocks in the house stop. At this precise moment, their youngest daughter, Cindy, starts sleepwalking and begins banging her head against an old wardrobe. When Roger arrives there, the atmosphere is chilling and strange. The girls are clinging to each other in fear. Meanwhile, when Carolyn goes to the kitchen, she smells a foul odor, like something is rotting. As she turns around, the kitchen door slams shut on its own. Now the Perron family begins to feel that this house isn't just old, but something is trapped within these walls that does not want them there. Every passing moment is becoming a torture for them, and this was only the first night. Friends, now every day had become a new trial for the Perron family. One afternoon, Carolyn is playing hide and clap with her daughters. In this game, you have to follow the sound of claps while blindfolded. As Carolyn is searching for her daughters with her eyes closed, she feels someone clapping right next to her ear. She smiles and asks, "Hiding in the basement, are you?" But friends, she had no idea that her daughters weren't even there. As soon as she descends the basement stairs, the door slams shut behind her, and darkness engulfs everything. Terrified, Carolyn strikes a match, and just then, she sees a horrifying shadow. She hears 2 claps coming from the darkness, but there is no human being there. This scene is so intense that it leaves the audience breathless. It felt as if the demonic entity was playing with them, trying to drive them insane. That same night, the atmosphere of the house becomes even more terrifying. The older daughters, Nancy and Andrea, are sleeping in their room when Nancy feels someone pulling her feet. She thinks Andrea is playing a prank, but Andrea is fast asleep. Suddenly, Nancy looks toward the top of the wardrobe. Friends, a hideous and terrifying old woman with a rotting face is sitting there. She suddenly leaps toward Nancy. Hearing Nancy scream, Roger rushes into the room, but no one is there. The room is just ice cold. Carolyn now realizes that they aren't facing a simple ghost, but a demonic curse. She decides that they can't wait any longer and goes to seek help from Ed and Lorraine Warren. When Lorraine steps into the house, she experiences a terrifying vision that shocks her to her very core. Friends, now the heroes of our story enter the scene, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Carolyn attends one of their seminars and tearfully pleads for their help. Ed and Lorraine immediately realize that this isn't an ordinary case. When they arrive at the Perron house, Lorraine feels a chilling heaviness at the doorstep that is beyond human explanation. They bring along recorders and thermal cameras. Ed explains that demonic forces work in 3 stages. First, infestation, noises. Second, oppression, mental pressure. And third, possession, taking over the body. The Perron family was very close to the 3rd stage. When Lorraine walks toward the old tree behind the house, she sees a terrifying vision, a woman hanging from the tree with pitch-black eyes. This was the same demonic spirit that wanted to destroy the entire family. During the investigation, Ed and Lorraine discover a very old and dark history of this land. They learn that in 1863, a woman named Bathsheba Sherman lived here. People said she was a witch who had sacrificed her 7-day-old infant to the devil. When she was caught, she committed suicide by hanging herself from that very tree, but before dying, she cursed anyone who would ever step onto her land. The Warrens find out that Bathsheba's spirit possesses every mother who moves into this house and then forces them to murder their own children. Now they understand why Carolyn was getting those bruises. Bathsheba was hollowing her out from the inside to take full possession of her body. The atmosphere becomes so tense that the Perron family feels they might not live to see the morning sun. Friends, by now Bathsheba realized that Ed and Lorraine Warren were the biggest obstacles in her way. One night, while the Warrens are staying in the house to gather evidence, the entire house suddenly fills with an eerie chill. Through an old music box, Lorraine sees the spirit of the young boy whom Bathsheba had murdered. The boy is terrified and signals Lorraine to run away. Suddenly, an invisible force attacks Lorraine and drags her toward the basement. Ed rushes after her, but in between, all the pictures on the walls start falling and the furniture begins to fly on its own. It felt as if the entire house wanted to swallow the Warrens alive. This scene is so intense that you'll feel like there's no way out anymore. Friends, we have now reached the point in the film where every moment is filled with the fear of death. Ed, Roger, and Lorraine reach the basement of the old farmhouse, where the sight they witness turns their blood cold. Carolyn, now completely possessed by Bathsheba, is about to attack her own daughter. Ed realizes they don't have enough time to wait for a priest. He decides to perform the exorcism himself, even though it was a massive risk. As soon as Ed began reciting the holy words, the entire house started shaking like an earthquake. Carolyn's body began to levitate, and demonic veins appeared across her face. She was screaming in a language that couldn't possibly belong to a human. Lorraine saw that Bathsheba had become so powerful that she could actually kill Ed. But friends, the real battle was happening inside Carolyn's mind. Lorraine goes to Carolyn, holds her head, and reminds her of her daughters. She reminds her of an old photo they took at the beach. Lorraine screams, "Carolyn, remember your family. Don't let her take you." This was the emotional turning point where a mother's love stood face to face against a demon's hatred. For a split second, tears appear in Carolyn's eyes, and with all her remaining strength, she pushes Bathsheba out of her body. With a terrifying scream, Bathsheba's spirit leaves Carolyn and vanishes into the depths of the basement. A sudden silence falls over everything. The Perron family clings to each other, crying, unable to believe they survived. Ed and Lorraine embrace them and lead them out of that living hell. At the end of the film, we see Ed and Lorraine take the cursed music box to their occult museum and place it near the Annabelle doll.